S-Bun, and we're gonna talk about social media addiction, which is like super amazing. Yeah. So this is gonna be our last, not last, but we're gonna take a pause from IG Lives for a while. Um, and then I'll be sharing like I said, I'll be sharing the reruns on my YouTube channel. So I'm gonna invite Caleb to. Alrighty, there we go. This is happening. Amazing. Oh, oops. What's up, Caleb?
Hey, Abby. How are you doing?
Good. I'm just trying to. Okay, I think it's stable now. Trying to place my camera properly, my phone properly. Okay, this is good. What's up? How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm at work on lunch because they changed up my schedule. I was supposed to be off, but I'm making that money, so it doesn't matter.
Okay. So this is like you're not gonna get called of this IG live, right?
I'm good.
Okay, I mean, it's fine. We can always wing it. But thank you for creating time, and I'm so glad we're doing this. Finally.
Oh yeah, no. I've really enjoyed what you've been doing so far, and
You.
you're legitimately one of my favorite people to talk to because
Oh no, Caleb.
afterwards.
You're making me blush now, and it's a Monday, so I think this is a good vibe to start the week on, right? So I'm doing this thing where I introduce everyone who comes on the show. I feel like opera. I feel like opera now. But so this is Caleb Bunn, everybody. And you graduated from the College of Cinema and Photography at SIU. And I know you took a lot of screenwriting classes, theater classes, something like that. Yeah. So you're an expert. I'm giving this. Yeah. Just take it. Just take it.
All right. I don't believe you, but I'll take it.
Oh my God. No, Caleb, you're amazing. And we also worked together on In My Hands, which is an art exhibition we've been trying to do every year apart from this year, but it's still going to happen, right? I have, solid hopes for it, right? So we go way back, and it's amazing to have you. So thank you. Welcome. Just imagine there's a red carpet. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So we're talking about Ingrid Goes West, which, wow, I saw it yesterday and I was like, wow, Caleb, thank you for recommending. Yeah. Just I have like so many bullet points, but I'm gonna let you start by giving us like a plot rerun of like summary, of what the film is.
So it's about Aubrey Plaza, who plays Ingrid, and she is a kind of codependent person who relies on parasocial relationships to get by. And after having a falling out in her hometown, she decides to go west and, in her mind, befriend, in other words, possibly stalk an Instagram influencer played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead. And kind of over the course of the movie gets caught up in some of the lies and manipulations that she has had to do to get to this point of befriending and emulating this influencer.
Okay, good summary. So one of the things that I noticed, right, excuse me, in the opening is, so the film opens with like an IG post itself, right, about someone getting married, right? And then I think that goes to, can you talk about, so being a cinema major, you can get to this, right? The perception of like what is real and what is a representation, right? Because the film opens with like a representation of this person's wedding, which she totally goes in and screws up. And I was like, okay, well, well, you didn't have to go all the way, but it's fine. We're still going to talk about the film's representation of mental illness, which I think is something we can't ignore because, it kind of gets to that. But yeah, so what is real and what's a representation, especially with Instagram, right? So a lot of I don't want to say boomers, but there's a certain class of people who are like, oh, your generation is, you all love social media so much and you're stuck on social media. But when you read media history, it's like we as human beings have always been, I don't want to say addicted, but connected to something. So at some point, like in the 50s, it was like 50s and 60s, it was color TV, right? At some point, it was newspapers, right? We just loved flipping through the papers and stuff. So now it's social media, right? And we want to project a part of our life and a part of our world on social media. But does that mean it's fake? But what's real and what's a representation, right? The film itself is a representation of something, right?
Yeah. It's a weird litmus space between the two. I, like a lot of people my age, kind of grew up posting videos online, which very early, I think, kind of messed with my idea of where does real Caleb begin and like performative, I'm going to make a YouTube video about whatever, begin. And I think that line is very blurry and kind of intentionally so, because we're always reinventing ourselves. So there's never really a solid state of who you are. And I think what social media allows us to do is it allows us to kind of look beyond who we are, to kind of learn from other people, and to kind of mold ourselves that way. The flip side of that, of course, is that also can dangerously turn into we lose what bit of ourselves we already had in complete emulation. And that we start to define our social relationships by what we're seeing online. We turn ourselves into content, and we turn content into people.
I like that, and I'm taking notes because I'm also, apart from posting this again, so every other person can watch it again. I'm also trying to create like little quotes, like IG stories that people can also flip through. So I like that. So it's okay to post. It's okay to share a part of your life. It's okay to see what people are doing on social media and be influenced by that. But what the danger is that we could also lose a part of ourselves as we emulate. Like you're trying to copy. Like, oh, I want to be. There's this thing back home that where we talk about like people who are so obsessed with their church leaders and they begin to talk like them. Like you have the same hairstyle. Yeah. So it's kind of like that thing where you emulate to the point where you lose your uniqueness, right, in a sense. So that's very good. So good. Another thing I thought about is why do we post on social media, right? And I said this because of the wedding, right? So she saw this wedding post, and I'm not sure, maybe I missed that. Why did she spray that person, the girl who was getting married? Was it because did the girl get married to her ex, or was she just mad?
So, yeah, it's only briefly touched on.
Okay.
But Ingrid feels like she and this person are deep friends. She has this bit of narration where she says, "You're the only person who reached out to me after your mom died." What you find out later in the film is that this person just commented on one of Ingrid's posts. They didn't really know each other. The extent of their relationship isn't that explored, but it kind of shows how much a single interaction with Ingrid goes to define how she sees you.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense, right? So, what I was looking at is, so she scrolls through so many posts, right, through her day, like on the couch, in the bathtub, like that's her life for some time. But another thing I thought about is we don't even think about how much our posts influence other people, right? So when you post whatever it is, a selfie, whatever it is, how much of your post is influencing someone else? So one of my friends, Sam Shaw, would always say, before I post anything or before I come on Instagram, I have a purpose for doing it, right? It's either I want to reach out to so many people or I want to pass a message. And I was like, do we ask ourselves, why am I posting this content? What's the purpose of it? So I was thinking maybe we could talk about that a little bit. Why do we post, especially now that we're in the social media world? I don't know if there's an answer to it. I mean, sometimes it's just vanity, but
well, why I wonder, why are you doing these Instagram lives?
Yeah, this is to share, to create a community of creatives. Yeah. But is it let me use myself as an example. Every time do I think before I post every single thing, before I share a selfie of myself or I share my food picture, am I thinking, oh, what am I posting? I'm just yeah, I'm just going to share this on social media. Are we that conscious, right, as a culture? And is that somewhere that we should a culture we should start to imbibe, right? Because your post not affect, but influences, it's going to influence someone in some kind of way, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and I think part of it also is that because all this stuff is so new, um,
Right.
we haven't created our social rules for it yet, or
Right.
personal rules. So like just thinking back to my Instagram story yesterday, what I was posting, right? Like I posted about this because I wanted people to come and hear our conversation.
Yeah.
I posted about something about Mother's Day because it was Mother's Day. But like in reality, my mom doesn't care if I post on Instagram because she's not on here. Right?
Yeah, I saw that. I saw this meme. You know the guy with the signs? He posted a meme. He's like, you all posted Happy Mother's Day, which includes me. I didn't say things. He's like, your moms are not on Instagram. I'm like, duh, I'm still gonna share it anyway. So yeah, but continue. That was funny when I saw that.
And then I posted something about me playing D&D last night. And that was very much like, if I think back to that, it's like, why did I do that? Well, I want people to know that I play D&D. It has become part of my identity. But each one of those posts has like a very different thing. And I'm wondering if like part of our problem when we navigate these spaces is the difference between like just letting your friends know what you're up to and then being content producers. I think the line is less between like, are you spending too much time? Are you like obsessing over this? And it's more of like, are you aware that you're emulating like a commercial content machine? And for a long time, I don't think I was. And I still think that because of that time, I fall into kind of those trends of like, oh, I'm just posting stuff because like I need to get my engagement up. But my engagement doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. This is very cool that you actually mentioned because we know, shout out to Dr. Kapoor who teaches here at SIU, the College of Cinema. Hey, maybe I'm gonna share this, I don't know. But she talks about neoliberalism. Like that's one of the things she talks about constantly. And she talks about this idea that not she, but if you belong to her scholar group, this idea that social media is making us as human beings producers of not just content, but we're turning our lives to labor, if that makes any sense. We're becoming laborers, right? And instead of just like having fun and pleasure and just hanging out or having like and I'm trying not to be simplistic, saying if you're sharing on social media it's not sincere. That's not true. But we're turning everything we're doing into some kind of labor that has to reap a benefit, right? So when I'm sharing a picture of my yoga or a picture of my smoothie or a picture of my breakfast, it's labor. I'm doing it maybe as a social media influencer or whatever, right? And at first I was like, like you said, I'm just sharing. But now what you're saying is we're becoming content producers, some kind of content, whether you know it, whether you're aware of it, like, whether you identify as a content producer or not. That's what we're beginning to do, right? And it's just like, I feel like what this is beginning to get at is we need to create a social media culture, like ethics-ish, unconsciously somewhere, that kind of guides this, right? So we don't just become zombies. Or with Ingrid, we don't just become attached to the gratification that comes out of this, right? And so we can just go to the next thing I have here, right? The instant gratification you get from scrolling, right? So I've read a lot of books about instant gratification, with Facebook and with Instagram, right? It's intentionally created that way, that you always go back to check how many likes you have, or you always go back to check how many comments you have. And I'm spacing out on the author right now, but he doesn't have a Facebook account. And, he tried to create an app when he went to school with Zuckerberg. So he tried to create an app like Facebook, but he didn't, it wasn't as successful as Zuckerberg. So he has that beef. But he also says, hey, this is created for you to get attached to instant gratification. versus delayed gratification. I'm going to do this work and then I'm going to get gratification from actually doing something. So let's talk about that with Ingrid, right? So we find out at some point, and it's not a spoiler, I don't think. One of the reasons why she's so attached to becoming obsessed with having a friend is because she lost her mom. And her mom is her best friend, right? So rather than spending time to grieve, which I think is a thing with our culture now, like we don't spend time to sit with our emotion. Like, oh, this sucks. I'm gonna get ice cream. This sucks. I'm gonna watch a movie, right? She just scrolls and she's like, getting that gratification from scrolling, and then with wanting to become friends with this person. So let's talk about that a little bit, right? Like Ingrid, instant gratification and grieving, like with social media, like how that just makes us obsessed with instant pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one of these things where this goes a little bit beyond my knowledge, because it starts getting into like actual brain chemistry and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that's why it's important to ground whatever community, whatever satisfaction you find in social media in the real world. Ingrid shapes her world to match what she sees on Instagram. So she starts following Taylor around to the different places she goes. She gets her hairstyle like that. She goes to the same like coffee shops and stuff. And what you slowly realize is like this is a world that's not really, it lacks a sense of reality to it. And I think that's part of our danger, is because you can find really good community, you can find really good humanity online. But I think there's a step where it's like, well, where does that actually factor into what you're doing in your real life? To use a kind of churchy word, where's the application? How is this affecting you when you turn off the phone? And of course, the problem is if you're not letting it, then you're not going to turn off the phone.
Right. That's again, it's getting to this, again, you mentioned real, right? There has to be a stable world, and I'm saying stable because I've been thinking about that a lot, that you're grounded in, right? You cannot be grounded in social media. Social media cannot be a stable world. It's not stable. And I think with Ingrid, like you said, that's one of the things that makes it so bothersome, is that she tries to make this social media life a stable world. And let's talk about the character she goes to meet. I made a note, and I said Taylor is full of shit. I can just tell. And I mean, I don't mean to be like a hater, but when I'm saying this very carefully. I respect, like, when I see filters on Instagram or whatever, like, big ups to you. That's cool. I'm not saying your life is fake. But there was just something about Taylor that I'm like, yeah, nah, this is not as real. This is not as good. Her life is not as good as she's making it look, right? And which we later find out, right? But anyways, the point with Ingrid is that she tries to make this world her stable world, and it becomes an obsession, and she's just trying to get immersed in this thing that's constantly evolving and constantly changing. But let's talk about Taylor's character. What do you think? What do you think about this character and the character's relationship with Ingrid?
Well, so I think the most interesting thing about it, especially on this watch, is I don't think Taylor sees anything she does on Instagram as like a true reflection of herself. She is a very like business oriented, business minded person. The problem is that her business, like it's promoting these products here and there, but it's also selling herself. And I don't think she fully realizes the extent of that till the end. And I'm still not sure if she does, but I think the audience realizes it. When her and Ingrid kind of have some tension over this and have an argument about this. And Ingrid calls her out for being, fake. Of course, the difference there you get into is that Taylor's actions are destructive. She's hurting other people. She's manipulating other people. Ultimately, she's hurting herself. And where Taylor's is, she probably isn't having a great impact on the world, but it's not directly harming other people. She's playing into a harmful system, but her individual action doesn't really harm uh, anyone else. It's when Ingrid, starts to bring that world, try to replicate that stable world, like you said, and I love that word, stable. Um, but then I think what the movie does really well, and I think why the movie is more than just a phones are bad kind of thing. It shows that we do this in all sorts of things. Ezra, the boyfriend of Taylor, he presents himself as this very smart artist and stuff, but in reality, he's not making any money. He's deeply unhappy with his relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Nick, who is the brother of Taylor, is the inverse of Ingrid, where he's doing the exact same thing she is with manipulation and with lying and stuff, but because he's doing it to try to kind of push her out of this life where she's trying to be pushed in. And then my favorite character is Dan, who's her landlord and then fake boyfriend, then maybe real boyfriend. And his whole thing is he perceives everything through the filter of Batman. And I love that idea of just he had this childhood trauma. He turned to stories, as we often do, to try to take that. And he is living in a lot of ways just as false a life as Ingrid is, except I think he understands that.
Yeah, he does. He says it. So for just create a little bit of context. So Taylor is an Instagram influencer who has so many followers, who Ingrid becomes obsessed with, and wants to be best friends with by all means necessary. So Dan says it when they finally go out to dinner. He says, I use Batman to how do I say this? Get over or be able to deal with the loss of my parents, right? But Ingrid hasn't. I don't think she's got into that point where she's like, oh, this is me, and then this is the mediator world, right? Let me use that terminology. This is the mediator world. She's just meshed it into one. But every other person seems to realize that, like you said, including Taylor, right? Even though she lies. I mean, I really did not want to like Taylor, but the the film gives her. I think she's a well-rounded character in a sense, because you can see what motivates her actions. Like you said, she's a business person. She sees Instagram as a business, and she realizes that. Right? It's Ingrid who doesn't, unfortunately. And honestly, I feel like there are a lot of Ingrids, which we see at the end of the film. I am Ingrid. There are a lot of Ingrids in this world who come on Instagram or come on Facebook and see this sage or this motivational speaker or this influencer, and they're like, oh my God, I love this person. Look at what they're doing with their life. I feel that way about some people sometimes, and you forget that this is a business to them, right? When you're reaching out to them, it's with this model, going back to Dr. Kapoor's whole neoliberalism thing, right? They're not your best friend. Eventually, can you become best friends? Yes. But here, when you reach out, it's within a frame, right, of this new labor / friend / social media thing, right? Okay, so let's get into a little bit of cinema and representation, yada yada yada. So, what do you think about Ingrid's character? The representation of Ingrid's character. She seems like an introvert. She seems like a quiet person, And I just took a note. There seems to be this thing in films where it's introverts or people who necessarily aren't very outgoing are the ones who are attached to some kind of to social media, or are the ones who are more susceptible to mental illness, blah, blah, blah. And it's not necessarily, of course, we know film is a representation, but that representation is becoming quite problematic. So did you catch that vibe when you were watching it? I was like, there are many other people. Why am I seeing this a lot, right? Like, oh, introverts are the most affected and most sensitive people. So when we make films with anyone who is struggling to a certain extent, it has to be someone who is an introvert. I was like, not necessarily, but
that's interesting that you read her as an introvert. I didn't even think about whether she would be introverted or extroverted. But I think if we're gonna go by the technical definition, I'd actually say she's more extroverted because she does get energy from these social interactions. I think, but going off more of the wider trend, I think it's probably just because a lot of creative people are introverted. and you write what you know. So like when I write a character, chances are
Okay, that's a good, good way to bring that. You write what you know. So who is writing this story, right? You're writing it from. Sorry. Keep going. I caught you.
Oh, no, you're good. You're good. You picked up on right the best time because I had no idea where I was going with that.
No, but it's true. I mean, Danielle was. Oh, I just. Well, shout out to you whenever you watch it. But she was saying that she went to New York with some students from her school, and they went to explore the creative space in New York, meeting directors and all of that stuff. And we're talking about this, and she was saying, yeah, basically, like she was able to meet the faces behind a lot of TV shows that we watch, and she's like, oh yeah, that's why that character is that way, or that's why that character is written in that way. And I'm like, we kind of forget that most people, there are people who write these stories, and you draw inspiration for what you're watching from the world you recognize, right? So I think that's an explanation for why this could be this way, right? Who is writing the stories? Most creatives are introverts or ambiverts, sometimes extroverts. I mean, not trying to be like stereotypical in that way, but yeah, a lot of times creatives like to spend time alone. So maybe that's why that comes across in the character. But do you think Ingrid's character is? Let's talk about you talked about this when we actually took a class together, history of African American representation in film, and I remember in that class you talked about the script is poorly written, or you talked about three-dimensional characters. So what do you think about Ingrid's character? Do you think this is a well-rounded three-dimensional?
It's interesting. I think this is a very purpose-driven character. I wouldn't say she's mostly three-dimensional because...
Well, and can you quickly explain, let's give a little bit of what a three-dimensional character is, or, should look like.
Yeah, so when I say three-dimensional, what I mean is that, like, you can see them from multiple angles and multiple motivations. So they feel more real because you can see this is not just the one thing that defines them. A lot of times in movies, you'll get people who just serve a plot function, and so it's like, well, I have no motivation for you, so I don't feel like you're real at all. Then other times you'll have people who are like, well, I can understand why you think this, but this you might think this situation. I think Ingrid is kind of in the middle. She has one clear motivation, and I don't think the film ever really lets us see her away from that because she doesn't know who she is away from that. So I actually think she's interestingly a two-dimensional character, but in a very positive way.
Okay. Because that's the crux for her. That's the theme for her. She's not I don't want to say she's not fully developed, but she's still growing in her self-awareness. So that motivates the way her character is constructed. Yeah. Oh, I thought you wanted to finish your thought. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So character construction. We've talked about sitting with grief. I think we can just move away from that. Now let's talk about authenticity. So at the end of the film, a little bit of a spoiler. Sorry, everyone. So when at the end of the film, it seems like she kind of breaks out of her. She kind of begins to have this self-awareness, even though it's in a painful way, right? So at the end of the film, I don't want to release a spoiler, but hey, should I do it?
Let's just say she takes an action.
She takes an action, yeah.
An authentic action, which is unique for her.
Okay.
And then she posts that online.
Yeah, good. That's a good way to phrase it. So she takes an authentic action, posts it, and that's what actually brings people to her, right? So when I was looking at that, I was thinking about authenticity, and there's some people that I follow on social media who I like their page. I like what they're doing because I feel like they're authentic. And it's not that they don't use filters or anything, but they invite you into their world and they're able to say, hey, this is where life sucks for me, right? These are things I'm still figuring out. And this is what I've learned so far. And you can go on this journey. And I feel like as humans, we have this sixth sense of recognizing authenticity when we see it, or when we feel it, right, which draws us to people. So it's very interesting that the film actually ends on that note, right? Which can take us into a discussion of mental illness, actually. How does the film, so yeah, she takes this action, which is quite authentic, which brings more people to be her friend, and she finally gets what she wants, what she's been driving for the whole film. But how does the film represent mental illness in your perception?
Well, it's tough to say because I think this film does what a lot of films are kind of wise about, where it keeps it keeps what exactly she's dealing with vague.
Mm-hmm.
Because the more specific you get, the more true you have to say to that. I don't. I think it works for the function of the film. However, people who do have codependency issues, who do rely on like parasocial relationships, I'd be very interested to see what they think of the film because they obviously have a more authentic read on it than I would.
I really like that. You've done something that I think we should start to embrace more as a culture. That you said, okay, this is what I think, but I'm not an expert at this, and I think we should invite people who are more aware of this to discuss this. I respect that so much. Like when people do that, I'm like, oh my god, that's so amazing. We should do that more. Not come on social media and be like, well, I don't experience this, but let me tell you everything you need to know. It's like, go sit down. So that's super cool, and yeah. So I was looking when I thought about this. Also, I was thinking about Joker, and a friend of mine who experience has a mental difference. I've heard someone use that language, and I like it, so I'm going to start using it now. He said, I don't like the way Joker represents mental illness, right? The fact that or this trope that everyone who is mentally different, is going to be violent, or it's just going to shoot everyone. It's becoming a trope in cinema. And hey, see, your friend is here. Well, yes. And I was kind of watching out for that in Ingrid Goes West. I don't remember, she doesn't really, oh, wait, she kind of does something that is harmful to someone, right? When
well, yeah, the film opens up with her being taking a violent action.
That's true. So she takes one violent action. Later on in the film, they kidnap Taylor's brother, who I feel kind of deserved it. I actually wish well, let me not say that. He kind of deserved it. I mean, he's a jerk. So she does do one or two things that you're like, well, is this feeding into that trope of people who are mentally different are always going to be violent, or does this stabilize our representation? And like you said, I think we should open that conversation for discussion. I mean, when I post this, I'll be open to seeing what people say about that. But that's something I'm always watching out for. Like in Joker, I can't remember any other films, but it's becoming a thing where people are beginning to like note that, like that's a harmful representation, right? Yeah, very.
And the trouble is in the repetition of the idea. Because like you can cherry pick an example and be like, but this is a really good story that falls into that trope. But it's because it's repeated over and over. It's the fact that that's the only story we tell about those people. And
Yeah.
So even if we decide that, or others decide that Ingrid does fall into that kind of character trope, it doesn't mean that it's a bad story. It just means that there is a wider problem that the film points to.
Okay. Yeah. So for everyone joining us now, we're talking about Ingrid Goes West, and I'll post this on YouTube so you can catch up with the beginning of the conversation. So we've said a couple of things so far. We've talked about the film's representation of mental illness. We've talked about instant gratification and the film's representation of how we're addicted to just gaining gratification from social media. Yeah. So we've talked about a couple of things. Any other thing I'm missing out that you stood out to you? Actually, what are your thoughts when you saw Ingrid Goes West? This is the kind of things I noticed when I saw it. So let's see what stood out to you.
Well, so the first time I saw it when it came out, I think what stood out to me was this idea of every character in the movie. They have their own mask that they hide behind. So for Ingrid, it's this facade she's putting on to get to Taylor. For Taylor, it's this facade she's putting on so that she can be an influencer and make money. For Dan, it's Batman, right? Like he's emulating a hero so that he can get past this trauma. And I find that compelling because I think there is, whenever you're producing any kind of content, and I think something we've kind of realized on here is that if you're posting, you're creating content. There really is no escaping it. There is no way to get around the fact that you are going to have to kind of sacrifice some of your authenticity. But what I appreciate about characters like Dan is that he understands that and he's aware of where his authenticity is being sacrificed. The thing I thought about this viewing, and especially afterwards when I was going and reading and watching other people's reviews and reactions to it, was how many people read this film differently than I do.
Okay.
And I'm curious as to what you think. At the end, do you, without getting into too many spoilers, but do you think that Ingrid ends in a better place than where she began?
Whoa, that's a good question. That's a very good question because have you seen this film, Three Idiots? It's it's an old film. I remember when I saw it. It came out 2011. This is not correct, but I remember it came out when I was in. I saw it when I was in college. Right? Three Idiots. I don't know if anyone here has seen it. You know, it kind of ends. You know, they're having this struggle, and yeah, they're writing exams. It's like a story about friends in India. There were four friends. So they're writing this exam, and one of them is so scared of the exam. I think he tries to commit suicide. So he jumps off a building or something, if I'm remembering correctly. He ends up in a wheelchair, but because of that action, he gains the admission or whatever it is he's looking for. This has been a long time, but I remember someone, my best friend gave me a comment. She's like, I didn't like the way the film ended because are we rewarding? Are we saying that, you know, when you're scared, just go do, oh yeah. So Anne has seen it. Yeah. So correct me if I'm reading this wrong, but she's like, I don't like that idea that, you know, when we're scared, we just need to go do something different. I don't want to say crazy. You just need to do something very dangerous so that people can pity you, you know, self-pity and stuff. And I kind of saw what my friend was saying, but at the same time, I'm like, we all react to things differently. And this is a long way. 2009. Thank you, Aki. Aki said the film came out in 2009. This is kind of a long way of coming back to your question. Whoa, Caleb, you just threw me one. I don't know. Okay, should I be honest?
Yes, authentic. Be authentic.
Be authentic. Oh my God. So when I saw that at first, I was like, how helpful is this going to be? So the action she takes, which we don't want to give spoilers, if you still want to see Ingrid Goes West, the action she takes brings in so many followers, right, to Ingrid, right? Should we, so my concern is, should we encourage that behavior? Yeah, so Anne says she does try to commit suicide. He does try to commit suicide. It's more due to the pressure of society to succeed, of course. So looking at that context, right? Which I feel like the context, like being a Nigerian, kind of could understand, right? Your parents want you to get all A's. They want you to be a doctor. They want you to have everything all like just top notch and stuff like that. So that's what leads this character in Three Idiots to.
Sorry, I have to plug in my phone.
It's fine. That's what leads this character to commit suicide, right? But he gets what he wants at the end of the day. So with Ingrid, I'm concerned, is this going to encourage what I wanted, of which is very interesting when you watch a film. You're like, as an enlightened spectator, this is how I want the film to end. So what I wanted was her forming sincere friendships in the real world. So with like Dan, who I really love that character. But again, so getting more friends on social media, my concern is this going to allow her get that authenticity, which is what, as spectators, as you're watching, you're like, girl, you need some real friends. Leave Taylor alone. That's my concern. But at the same time, I actually cried. I cried when she shared that video. I connected to it in some kind of way because she was like, yo, I'm taking the mask off. This is really who I am. And one of my values as a person is authenticity. I want to feel when I'm sharing with people, I want them to know that I'm trying as much as possible, even though it may not be 100%, but as much as possible, I'm trying to be authentic. So when she put that out, I was like, oh, this is, and then when people reacted to it, it was quite emotional. But yeah, I was concerned about the ending, but there's a twist to it in that now she's not Ingrid, the perfect social media cool person. She's Ingrid who's accepted that she's accepted she's not okay, right? I need help, right? So this is who I am. So looking at it from that perspective, I'm like, you know what? That's fine too. So yeah, I don't know how to answer your question. I'm just telling you all the thoughts I had, my reactions when I saw that. Yeah. How about you? What did you think?
I'm pretty cynical about it.
Okay.
I feel like because everything else demonstrated in the story, uh, all the precedent that that hour and a half that came before it, I feel like she's just going to use that to jump right back into where she was.
Right.
She's going to use that authenticity the same way she used whatever means she did to manipulate Dan into getting his truck, or into Taylor into being her friend.
Yeah.
And so when she gets handed back the phone at the end of the movie, I just get really sad.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
But like maybe there has been a point where she has learned. She's learned about the value of authenticity. I think that's also where you run into the question of, well, she is she does deal with things a little bit differently. So how much of that is she processing the same way the viewer is processing it?
Sure.
It's a question I think they don't want you to have an easy answer to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when I was going through these reviews and stuff and finding out that some people did not agree with my deeply cynical take on the movie, I was like, oh wait, I am thinking about this a little bit too simplistically.
Yeah, I think that's the purpose, which is a lot of great films do that. They leave you with they don't close it. They don't close the film. So when you think about that film, you're always thinking of alternative endings, or what if this happened? It keeps that film fresh in your mind. So yeah, I think it's an ending that just makes you reflect a lot. Yeah, I really don't know, because I agree with you. When Dan gave Ingrid back her phone, I'm like, first of all, she's still in the hospital. Like I try to fast from social media, right? The days when I'm like, I'm not going on social media, or the days when I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna try to stay off of my phone for some time, right? So for this person who actually has issues with this, you shouldn't be giving her back her phone while she's still in the hospital. Like, so that made me very concerned. But at the same time, that she's opened up about who she is, I was like, it's kind of a balance. I really don't know. Yeah. So yeah, I don't think we can answer that. It's open. So when everyone else sees the film, let's know what you think. Anything else? Any other thoughts that stood out to you? So you just raised a good one.
I had one, and then I thought it will come back. I have to cycle through the thoughts in my head again.
Okay.
I guess what I would be wondering. This is a bit more about us than it is about the movie itself. But having watched this and having now had this discussion, do you think you handle social media like as well as you could? I'll put it that way. I was going to say responsibly, but that I don't like that word. So, because I think I do, but at the same time, I made a video when I was 12 talking about how you should act on Twitter. I didn't have a Twitter. I just made that video because I thought I knew better.
Yeah. Do I handle social media as well as I could? I think I want to handle social media better than I am now. So I think I do go on to extremes before, where I will just like knock out for like a whole week and just be like, you know what? I don't even want to get back on Instagram. And then when I come back, I'm just like, okay, here I am again. So right now what I'm doing is I'm trying to stick to what my friend Sam Usher, he gave a great. He wasn't giving me advice, but he just said it. It's like whenever I come on Instagram, I have a purpose for coming on there, right? And he's a writer, so he has posts about writing and all of that stuff. And you actually can see from the consistency of his posts that his posts are consistently about something. It's not just there just because. So I think I want to emulate that. Like, and it's not to just be stoic or how do I say very rigid. I still would continue to share selfies and pictures of my food and all of that stuff. But I want to be more conscious of why I'm using social media. I think that's yeah, it's a word similar to being responsible, conscious. Yeah, but I want to be more, have a reason, right? Why I'm doing this. If it's to make someone happy or laugh or, hey, yeah, just because sometimes. But because that's a culture we have to imbibe now, especially now that where entrepreneurship is moving to a lot of people being independent entrepreneurs using their social media handles for business and all of that stuff. So if this is a phase we're moving in, we have to have a social media culture that is aware of that. Right, your post is gonna go. You don't even know who's gonna read what you're posting or look at what you're posting, right? So if you have that at the back of your mind, I think that helps us to be more. Now I'm gonna use the word responsible of what we're putting out, right? So, anyways, back to me. Yeah, I think I'm doing better, but I would want to continue to do way better with what I'm pushing out there, right? And also realizing that hey, when I put something out, it's gonna stay there. It's gonna stay out.
Yeah.
Right, right. So if I'm posting a picture, I'm like, hey, happy birthday, bro. It's like, is this person really my bro? If something happens tomorrow and they're like, hey, do you know person ABC? Are you gonna stand by that person and be like, yeah, we go way back, we're like fam. Yeah, am I gonna do that? So just be more conscious of what I'm posting and why, and if I want it to be out there, then that's cool. Yeah. How about, yeah, you already answered that though. You're like, yeah.
Kind of. I dodged answering it because I was curious as to what you would say. But I think my more honest answer would be I need to be a little bit more conscious of ever since the virus has hit. Uh, I've found myself being more social because people are turning more to like Instagram and stuff. Um, and there was I'm in a group chat on Instagram with people who they talk every night. I'm not always there because I have to get up early in the morning to work. Um, but that's also meant that I'm relying more on Instagram. And so I definitely think that I can scale back my screen time on that. And I think that I need to make sure that when I'm looking down the feed, I'm not getting kind of my friends' content and then like professional content mixed up. I think that can be starting to be.
Oh, come on now. Preach. That is one I'm gonna write. Oh, I love that. So there's content which friends share, and there's content which professionals like influencers are sharing. Don't get it twisted.
Yeah.
Don't
And
be
then
like Ingrid.
like if you have a friend who wants to be an influencer, it's. I mean, I think that's part of why Ingrid mistakes her relationship with Taylor is because those lines are blurred.
I like that. Friends post versus social media professionals post. I think that's one. If we're creating a how-to social media, I think that would be the title of my Instagram story. I don't know yet, but I think that's what how-to social media. Don't get it twisted, right? If someone is pitching something to you and they're like, I care about you, and yeah, they do care about you, but they're not your best friend, and you have to have that. I think that creates a healthy social media culture. Yeah. So we're kind of yeah, running out of time. I'm sure Instagram is gonna release a little timer soon. So let's what shows are you watching now, and would you recommend to people, or would you even like me to discuss or us to discuss again at some point? Film.
Well, I sent you a whole list of movies that I thought would be interesting to talk about. I'd love to come back, especially you seem pretty excited to talk about Mad Max. So that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Right now, I've been watching. My roommate has been showing me this anime called Full Metal Alchemist, which is very interesting. It is a kind of high concept fantasy thing, but it's all about this idea of exchange, and you have to give up something to get something. So that's been interesting. And then this isn't a show, but I've been reading a book called The Power Broker. It is a biography about this figure in old New York who was responsible for infrastructure and parks and all this stuff, and how he manipulated the system basically. So he never had to get elected to office, but he had more power than the mayor and the governor combined. And it's really good. Very long. I've been working on it since August. And,
Okay.
getting close to the end, but
Good one. What you said reminds me of the show on Netflix. I think it's pronounced Lilyhammer. It's Norwegian / New York. So it's about this mafia guy that goes to Norway to this little community called Lilyhammer, and he just basically, he never becomes the mayor, but he has so much power and so much control. I'm like, who is this person? Is this a how to mafia? is this TV show a how to mafia and how to influence or get whatever you want in the real world kind of stuff? So yeah, we definitely should come back and talk about Mad Max. I think I'm gonna have to create a lot of notes for that because Mad Max is a film you could teach for a whole semester. A whole semester is kind of pushing it, but it's deep with cinematography, the scripts, the acting. There's so much to talk about. So yeah, we should do a comeback with that. Yeah. So thank you very much, Caleb. Thank you for spending your lunchtime, coming to talk about Ingrid Goes West. Thank you for everyone who's shown up. Shout out to everybody, Aki and Tessa. Everyone.
She's one of my people.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we appreciate it. Thank you for spending time with us, Femi. Yeah, do you have any closing thoughts before?
Just thanks for having me. I have to admit I was a little nervous coming on just because all your other guests have been so good. But hey, it's always fun talking to you. And I miss being able to run into each other in the comm building. So
yeah,
that we can have this virtual space. So
thank you, and it's always great talking to you too. So we'll come back again. We'll do another one with Mad Max. So yeah, thank you, and have a great afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your week also.
You too.
Yeah. So bye everyone.
Bye.